Hey, Space Watchers, and welcome back to Space Café Radio. My guest today is His Excellency Dr. Ali Al-Shidhani, the Undersecretary of Communications and IT at the Ministry of Transport, Communication and Information Technology of Oman. And Dr. Ali plays a central role in shaping Oman's digital and space ambitions under Vision 2040, bringing together connectivity, regulation, international partnerships, and the growing role of space as a tool for social and economic development. And I'm very pleased to welcome him to Space Café Radio. Dr. Ali, welcome.
Thank you. Pleasure to be part of this podcast.
How are you doing today?
I'm feeling excited, especially after the inauguration of the second edition of the Middle East Space Conference, and a little bit relieved that things in the opening ceremony went as planned.
Wonderful. And breaking news today was Oman is signing as the 61st country the Artemis Accords. So
Indeed.
That sounds absolutely exciting, and
Absolutely.
I'm quite sure it will be part of the plan. But how did it feel that it happened finally today?
Yes, the timing was perfect. We've been trying to get the right approvals internally within different ministries, including Ministry of Foreign Affairs and other ministries, trying to get the approvals to sign the Artemis Accord. And we just finalized it very recently. And the Middle East Space Conference was coming, and we thought it's a perfect opportunity to sign it in the first day in the opening of the Middle East Space Conference. Another interesting thing about the timing is that yesterday we had the third round of Oman-U.S. strategic dialogue. And in that strategic dialogue, space is one of the topics of discussion in the strategic dialogue. And it was one of the areas that was in progress, signing the Artemis Accord. So it was amazing that both sides, the Omani side and the US side, in the strategic dialogue, have witnessed the signing of the Artemis Accord today, a day after their meeting here in Oman. I think the timing was amazing. And we, as being the 61st member in the Artemis Accord, this just re-emphasizes our position in Oman to work with international partners, to collaborate and to explore and work together for the safe usage of space.
Absolutely. And I congratulate you and Oman for the signature. And what I particularly found striking is that I consider it as a good news.
Yes.
That coming from the US, especially from a European point of view, there are always some challenges,
Absolutely.
especially these days when it comes to the US. But let's focus on the other big developments that are happening here in Oman. The Oman Vision 2040 sets a long-term national direction. Where does space fit into
Absolutely.
this vision?
Oman Vision 2040 is the master plan for Oman to diversify the economy, to transform Oman into an innovative nation, and also to bring prosperity to the nation. Vision 2040, as the name implies, is a 20-year vision. It started in 2020. So it's a 20-year vision. The vision prescribes what do we want to achieve as a nation. So we want to be the most educated nation, the most healthiest nation, the most innovative nations. What do we want to achieve is what is stipulated in Vision 2040. The how to achieve this is left to ministries to develop based on ministerial strategies. The vision have ambitions when it comes to digital economy, and to translate those ambitions into action points, the Ministry of Transport, Communication and Information Technology is driving the National Digital Economy Program. So the National Digital Economy Program is a parallel program to Vision 2040. It translates the visions into actions in the digital economy space.
This is part of that?
And space is part of it. Yes. So the digital economy, let me spend a few minutes to talk about the digital economy. So the aspirations is that we want the digital economy to become a contributor to the national economy.
Mm-hmm.
Currently, the contribution of the digital economy to the national economy is minimal. And we want to grow that by 5-folds during the years of Vision 2040. And what also we want to do is that we want the nation to move away from being a consumer of technology to being a producer of niche types of technologies that are needed in the country to achieve digital sovereignty. The digital economy is the highlight of the nation. And for us to achieve that, 8 different streams have been identified as part of the digital economy. Digital government is one of the 8 streams. Digital industry, e-commerce, fintech, digital infrastructure, cybersecurity industry, and space technologies.
Okay.
So space is one of the 8 streams of the digital economy. And why space became tied to digital economy? Because the Oman space policy focuses or puts a lot of emphasis on the downstream industry of space, which is all about applications, data, software. That's why it falls right in the overall theme of the digital economy. The way we look at space now, at least in the medium term, is that space is going to be an enabler and contributor to the digital economy. That's why it's one of the 8 streams of the National Digital Economy Program. We've launched the space policy and program in 2023. And since then, we have seen tremendous attraction locally and internationally and huge focus and momentum in this space. And I think there are a couple of reasons why this is happening. The space sector in Oman is not new, but it was somewhat fragmented. By the establishment of the Ministry of Transport, Communication, Information Technology, the space sector was mandated to this ministry. This means that a new champion was been designated to lead the space sector, and that champion is the ministry. This championship, I think, made a huge difference. Having a champion that takes and charges the space sector gave confidence locally and internationally that there is a plan, there is a strategy, and there is a champion, and it's clear, and there are clarity on what we want to achieve. And there is a champion behind laying down this strategy and executing it. And the champion is going to work on pushing this agenda forward and removing any hurdles or difficulties that can come against this path. The space policy and program was received very well locally and internationally. And as a result of all that, in just 3 years, the size of investments have grown 200%. The number of employees have risen to almost 400 employees working in the space sector in Oman. Number of companies have grown 150% in the last 3 years. So we see great momentum happening in the space sector. And one of the indicators that there is something that is happening is that I am noticing traditional companies who were pure telecom, for example, or pure IT, or, for example, today we've witnessed a company that is an oil and gas, are now venturing into the space sector and getting into new adventures in the space sector. I think this is happening because of the clarity that is now in the sector and because of the championship of the ministry and the determination to achieve the objectives of the space program.
How does Oman see space contributing directly into economical? You mentioned about it, but social development. I understood from the strategy is also this turn from an oil economy to a knowledge-based economy.
Absolutely.
How difficult is that?
It is not easy. I wouldn't say it's difficult.
That's why we do space.
Yes, it is. Yes,
like Kennedy said.
Yeah, exactly. Because it is not easy. So the broader picture, as you rightly said, the broader picture is we want to diversify the economy, moving away from dependence on oil and gas and diversify into other knowledge-based sectors. Digital economy is one of them. In digital economy, we've identified 8 different streams. Space is one of them. So that's how it all cascades together. However, space is not standalone. When we talk about space here, we're talking about the usage of AI, for example, in space data. When we talk about space, we talk about the usage of data centers, for example. Oman is also have competitive advantage when it comes to data centers, and we want to leverage that in the space sector. So there are augmentations. Mm-hmm. It's not just space in the sense of deep technology, but also trying to cross-cut other technologies as well. Let me take you away from this normal context. Oman is a peaceful nation. We are known for being peaceful. We are a neutral country. We are friends with everyone. And we are blessed with a very unique geographical location. Therefore, one of the investment opportunities that was stipulated in the program is to create a launch facility, a rocket launch facility in Oman, taking advantage of the geographical location and the political stability and so on. So in a region where there are disruptions and maybe rockets are flying in the region for the wrong reasons, we are flying rockets for science. We decided to have a launch port to fly rockets to advance science rather than other maybe not so peaceful activities. But that's the positioning of Oman. That's why we are very determined on advancing science, advancing innovation, and getting our youth excited about the space sector. So the space policy focuses on the downstream industry, and that's where we invest as a government in capacity building, in driving innovation, and so on. However, the upstream is also an opportunity. And the role of the government in the upstream sector is to enable it, is to enable the business transactions, is to enable the policies, is to facilitate and attract upstream investments in the country. So while the government invests actively in downstream, it enables and opens up for investments in the upstream sector.
Yeah, upstream needs this regulatory framework.
Absolutely.
Because
Yes.
when something is launched from Oman, you're responsible, at least partially.
And we are very happy to announce that the work that was done between the ministry and the Civil Aviation Authority, which is the entity responsible to regulate any flying object.
Yeah.
The work that was done between these two entities was phenomenal to allow launching missions to happen with the least regulatory hurdles. And when the decision is there to launch a rocket, until you launch that rocket, to get the approvals and the permits, it takes 45 days only in Oman.
Wow.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. So
That
this
is fast.
This is the SLA that we have.
Okay.
Once the launching entity wants to launch a rocket and submits a proposal, we need to come back with an answer, hopefully positive, within 45 days. That's the speed of execution that we are bringing to the table.
On the panel earlier, you mentioned also, and you put a lot of effort onto that, the private sector
Absolutely.
in this. So that means beyond government programs, what you need as well. How is Oman encouraging the growth of the private sector? Is it through foreign ownership, for instance?
Yes.
Or so what are the rules and regulations?
Great.
Here?
So in general, there is a huge push by the government for private sector to operate in Oman, not in the space sector alone, in multiple sectors. There are sectors that has been identified as the sectors of interest. One of them is the digital economy with all its subsidiaries, including space. So we have a foreign investment law, which allows 100% full ownership, yes,
Wow.
for a foreign company to operate here in Oman. We have plenty of free zones and special economic zones. And in these free zones, you get tax breaks, you get special regulations, special fast-track approvals and permits, and exemptions from some taxes like import-export taxes in some of the free zones. We also have economic zones. There are also innovation zones. And soon we are going to announce a digital economy zone as well. So all these incentives are there for foreign companies to make the journey easy for them to turn red tape to red carpet for these companies to come and launch their business in Oman. So this is applicable to all sectors, but space and digital economy in general is an exception, and it's a focus area. And we are happy to see this excitement among the space ecosystem.
Maybe you can shed some light on the ongoing Oman or space law. Where does it stand? Because and I'm asking as a German, where we are now in our fifth iteration of the German space law, and it took forever, and potentially the EU Space Act will overrule us. But it's a different thing that comes from another entity. How is it in Oman?
Okay, so because we don't have a space law, this will be our first version. This is a joint initiative between multiple government entities to come up with a space law. The idea behind the space law is that the law will identify the roles and responsibilities of different government entities and what are the activities that are going to require license to do. And we will embed articles to give comfort to international companies to come and operate in the country, because it's going to be frameworked and the regulation is clear. Everyone can read the law before they decide to take on these kind of investments. So the main objective is to attract investments, to give comfort to the investment community. The activities, space activities in the country are following certain laws and certain rules and regulation, and it is known who are the entities that are responsible for these rules and regulations.
It's interesting to hear, and you're planning the law to enable and not to deny.
Oh, no. In fact, this is an interesting take, by the way. If you look at how technology is evolving, it is developing very fast. I don't think laws are the right tools to curb them and to limit them. We need other tools. Laws are there to strike that balance between having innovation but having it responsibly. So you want to have responsible innovation, and you don't want to limit innovation. You want innovation to flourish, but you want that innovation to be accountable for, responsible. It doesn't harm human beings. And if you think of it, not just space, artificial intelligence, data, they all fall within the same category where the law has to be balanced to allow and to enable private sector, but at the same time, you don't want to harm the citizen. You don't want to harm the end beneficiary. So it's not an easy thing. It's a mix of engineering and art to come up with a law that balances both sides.
Let me ask you one question, because we need this. Looking 5 years ahead, now signing the Artemis Accords, where do you realistically see Oman in the global space ecosystem? So the first Oman astronaut, or Oman is on the moon.
Yes.
You have your satellites now already.
Yes. We don't really look at Oman versus others. We always look at Oman versus ourselves. How can we improve? How can we become better? How can Oman tomorrow become better than Oman today? And how can Oman today become better than Oman yesterday? If that means that we are better than other nations, so be it. But that's not our focus. Our focus is how we as a nation become better. So where do we see ourselves in 5 years? In 5 years, we want to see that most of the technologies, applications that we are using today in the space sector, we want to localize as much as possible. And we want that in 5 years' time, although it's a very short period of time, but we want to depend more on local talents. We want to depend more on local technologies. We want to depend more on local satellites that we are launching. The more we have Omani talents behind these innovations, that is the measure of success for us. The measure of success is to have more innovations in the space sector backed by Omani talents. That translates into space sector contribution to the GDP grows further and further to create more job opportunities, to create more prosperity, to make the space sector more economic and prosper, to help the diversification efforts that the government is leading to become a more diversified economy.
Dr. Ali, thank you very much for your time. I know that you have to run to your next appointment, but I would love to keep this conversation ongoing to go deeper into what we can see in Oman. Thank you very much for your time.
I really thank you also for having me, and I hope that you have a pleasant stay here in Oman.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
If you like these or other episodes of Space Café Radio, leave us a rating on your preferred podcast platform. It is the currency of today. And if you want to stay on the pulse of the space industry, please visit our website at www.SpaceWatch.Global and subscribe to our newsletters. And of course, don't forget to become a Space Watcher. I'm Torsten Kriening, publisher at SpaceWatch.Global, your independent perspective on space.